Hi, everybody. This is Donna Reed. I traveled and up with people in 1976, and we are in the Cactus Lounge this morning. And for me, it's morning. It's 7:30 in the morning in Tucson, but my guest today, it's late at night. He's across the world. So welcome, John. Please introduce yourself, pronounce your last name so that we know it's correct, and then tell everybody when you first traveled and up with people.
Hi, Donna. And hello, everybody else, everybody out there. My name is John Luebke, and I first traveled as a cast member in '83. And then I went back to school, and then I worked for the alumni department actually for a couple of years. And then I went back on the road in '92 and in '93. So 5 years altogether, student or staff with Up With People.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so where are you originally from, John?
Originally, Minnesota, a small dairy farm in Minnesota, just west of Minneapolis.
West of Minneapolis. Okay. Okay. So is your name Dutch, the heritage, or what's your heritage?
German, mostly German.
German. Okay. And how did I would have said Luebke. How did you say it?
Yeah, I answer to a lot of different things, and my family changed it years ago, and like Libkey, Libkey.
Luebke. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
there's also Megan Libkey, but I think she pronounces it just a little bit different, and she's a former president of the Alumni Association, and we're distant cousins.
oh, that's fun. That's fun. So where did you see a show and how old were you when you first joined up with people?
In Sioux Falls, South Dakota, at Augustana College. And a good friend of mine said, "Hey, let's go to the Up With People show." And I said, "What? What is that? Why should I go? Blah, blah, blah." She had been interested in Up With People for years, and she convinced me, "Okay, we'll go." And then she said she was going, "Okay, that's interesting." We both interviewed. I was accepted, and she was not. That's a whole different story. So yeah, it was my sophomore year of college. And then I joined my first cast year. Well, my cast year was between my sophomore and junior year of college.
Oh, wow. So you really took the break in the middle of,
Yeah.
of college to go. Wow. So do you know Consemiuses, since I feel like everybody in
Oh,
Sioux Falls knows them?
absolutely. Yeah. And I worked in the alumni office, and Mark was the first. I don't know if he had the official title of Director of Alumni Relations, but I saw one of your recent interviews, and I also remember years ago. So when I worked in the alumni office, I worked very closely with Jerry Shelsta,
Yeah.
and Mark was still working in the office. I forget in which role, and Jeannie, of course, was there. So, yep, know those folks quite well. Haven't seen them lately. Hi,
Did
amazing
you by
people.
any chance watch the interview that I did with Paul Consemius with their son and stuff?
Oh no, no,
Yeah,
not
so I
yet.
just I just talked to four kids of alumni all in the Denver area. One of them is my son and Phil Woods, so Steve's son, and then Dave Penny, and Paul Consemius. So they all kind of hang out together and know each other in Denver and have come from parents who traveled or met on the road, and it's pretty interesting to hear their journeys like
I
as
bet. Yeah,
babies on the road. So when I say, when
yeah,
did you see your first show? They're trying to
yeah,
think of when they remember their first show,
yeah, yeah.
and stuff. It was pretty cool. So did you then stage in Tucson in
Yes.
83? Okay, okay. And traveled for a year. So part of what I love to ask people, and sometimes I do this at the end, but I'm going to do this first so that we can get to the rest of your life. When you traveled on the road, was there any place that you went to that you've never been back to that you would love to go, or any place that you went to that you'd be like, I don't care if I ever go there again, without totally insulting someone yet?
Uh, uh, Most of our tour was in the States, and then we had, I think it was 6 weeks in Ireland and 2 weeks in England. And I haven't been back to Ireland yet, but probably 30 to 40% of our cast got together in Ireland last week, or excuse me,
Last
last year,
year.
when
Oh,
so we had a huge contingent of our cast there, and I think that would be cool. Um, Most of our tour was in, I would say, the Midwest, middle states, and the Northeast. And I've been fortunate to gone back to several of those places. We were lucky to be part of the General Motors 75th anniversary tour. So my
Mm.
cast had a lot of private shows for employees of General Motors and in big
Interesting.
cities around that area.
Yeah, there were a lot of those back in the day. There was a General
Yes,
Electric
in
one.
the day.
I hear these songs in my head that were written specifically
Yes,
for certain
yeah.
things. So, all right. So you travel, you come back. Did you go back to Augustana and finish your degree there, or did you go somewhere else?
I finished at Augustana. Actually, when I was on the road, I was a part-time student at my college because I couldn't afford to pay back my guaranteed student loans. So I needed to be a part-time student and have at least 6 credits each semester. So I had talked with my professors in advance so that I could do 4 independent studies throughout the year. And then through my year in Up with People, I made up 1 semester of college. So when I finished Up with People, then I only had a year and a half of college. But yeah,
Oh, wow. So you did
it-
on your own what some
yeah,
people have done through the programs that Up with People created with certain colleges. Well, like with
yeah.
Hawaii, and that's cool.
Mhm.
That's real. Although I think about our traveling time and I'm like, I don't know how you fit school into that. You know?
It was a lot of journals and then, writing the reports at the end.
Yeah.
And I, I,
You
I don't
probably
know, maybe it's
treasure
my
those.
writing. I'm sorry?
You probably treasure those journals now, like being, or does it seem weird?
Well, I still have them. Honestly, I have not looked at them in years.
You should look.
And I cleaned out a lot of my house a couple of years ago, and I'll tell you why in a little bit when we get to
Mhm.
that. But I still, they're in great shape. I know exactly where they are, and I think someday, yeah, I'll go through them.
It's fun to do that. When we're
Mhm.
not recording, I'll tell you a story about my one of my journals. Um,
Okay.
so you finished school. What did you do once you graduated from school, and then kind of how did you get back into the alumni department and all of that?
I moved to Washington, D.C., and I started working as a program assistant with the National 4-H Council
Oh,
because I had been a 4-H member for 9 years. My family and most of my relatives, everybody was involved in 4-H. And I was a tour guide and workshop facilitator, which led to another job. And then through an Up with People alumnus connection, John Hall,
yeah,
Little John Hall,
Little John.
uh,
Okay.
yep, I started working at the American Bankers Association where he was. And then at that time, that Up with People decided to hire a second staff member in alumni relations. And that's when I applied and then moved out to Tucson.
Interesting.
And
Do you happen to know Stuart Shepard? Do you know
of
Stuart?
course,
Okay, I
yes.
mean, because he was so involved in 4-H,
Mhm.
and stuff
Yep.
there. And
Yeah.
very cool. Very cool.
And then after, well, in Up with People, my first roles were working with the Alumni Association and helping some of the chapters, working with some of the cast reps, and then planning reunions. And I was involved with the 25th anniversary in Denver in
Yes.
1990.
I was
And then
there. Yeah.
yeah. And then I also helped plan the European reunion in 1992
Ah, okay.
in Brussels.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. I was not at that one. And I remember that everybody was like, we got to try to go other places and things like
Mhm.
that. So the fact that they're
Yeah.
actually doing it now is is pretty interesting. Next year is my
Yeah.
50th. So
Congratulations.
yeah, yeah. I know. I remember when my dad had 50 years after high school, and I was like, you're so old. And now I'm like, well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to tell myself, I remember 50 years. Oh,
I
50
know,
years.
right? Do I want to say that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen the any of the stuff online about the group that's in Santa Fe right now, or just finished up a few days? That was the early uh people.
No, I remember from one of your interviews, I think John Parker was talking about that.
Yes.
No, I
Yeah.
don't think I've seen anything since.
Yeah. I just saw a few photos
Mhm.
of some of the people that were there. And it'll be interesting to hear. But definitely those people that even were coming from MRA,
Yeah.
and transitioning into Up with People and stuff. So Up with People High School, all those things. So very cool. All right. So the 90s go by. I don't know what you do during all the rest of the time. But now the reason that I really wanted to talk to you is because of where you are and what you're doing now. So, because I just watched your vacation photos with a friend that came and spent a bunch of time with you. never knew anything about this country except it's far away.
Mhm.
So tell everybody where you are and kind of the evolution of how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. Well, I am serving in the Peace Corps now for 2 years, and I am in the middle of Mongolia in Overhangай province, and it's pretty much smack dab in the middle of Mongolia. And I would have never guessed that I would be in Mongolia growing up. And
Was it on your list?
no. And I remember well, two things. One is that we didn't learn anything about Mongolia in high school history or anything.
No,
And I remember making jokes stupidly about,
right?
well, not like I'm going to outer Mongolia, that type of thing.
Me too. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And then um, oh, forgot what I was going to say. But uh, one of my dreams, my goals was Peace Corps. And I think probably around the time I was in Up with People, I learned more about Peace Corps and I thought, I'll just do it later. I can't do that. And finally I said about 4 or 5 years ago, it's like, okay, now it's time for me to do it. So I decided to apply for Peace Corps. And there's a box one can check, apply where most needed.
Mhm.
And that basically Peace Corps would then look at my application and see what would be the best fit. So Peace Corps headquarters decided first that I might go to Albania, but that got canceled. So then I was sent to, they asked me if I wanted to go to Mongolia, and I said, sure. So I'm in Mongolia, and our focus is English education and community development. So all of the Peace Corps volunteers in Mongolia, we all do co-teaching with English teachers in secondary schools. And then we also co-lead and facilitate clubs with students. And then we're free to develop community partnerships. And one of my big projects was an English spelling bee for our province, which we just had
Wow.
last week. And one of my colleagues had a debate club, a theater club. We've done a trash pickup. There are three of us here in my city, Arva here. And we have a lot of flexibility in addition to our uh, co-teaching English in our schools. That's probably like 20 to 30 to 40% of our time. The rest of our time is really flexible. We have lots of opportunities to develop community partnerships. And for those of you who are out there thinking about you want a new challenge, you want to try something different, you don't need a lot of supervision. It's an amazing way to challenge yourself, see the world, and do all those things about Up with People as well.
Wow. Okay, so are the other volunteers also like, are there 5 of you? Are there 30 of you from all over the world? How many others are there via the Peace Corps right now?
There are about 60 of us in
Wow.
Mongolia now. And Mongolia would love to have like 500 of us
Wow.
because English and Mongolia are the official languages of Mongolia. And there's been a push for the Mongolian government, I think for the past 5 or 10 years, that they want everybody in Mongolia to be literate in both languages by the year 2030 or 50 or something. So they ideally would love to have Peace Corps volunteers in every province, in every SUM, which is like like a county, possibly.
Okay.
And there are 60 of us. Since post-COVID, there have been 3 cohorts, and it's a 27-month program, and they're staggered. So there are 60 of us now, and probably will continue to be like 60, 80 of us for the next few years, unless the numbers go up. Unfortunately, the American federal government is slashing a bunch of things, and that could possibly affect the number of volunteers.
Wow.
Worldwide, I think there are about 2 or 3 thousand Peace Corps volunteers in different countries. Don't quote me on it, even though it's recorded. But since COVID, the numbers have been down greatly. And it's been more challenging to recruit people for Peace Corps.
That doesn't surprise me. So when the field, kind of what you're working in, were you placed to do what you're doing based on that application that you completed that said, based on John's life, we think his skill set would be really good in these areas? Like, do the Peace Corps volunteers all have kind of different strategic jobs that they are doing in the places where they're
Yes, and yeah, I would probably say yes to be a simple answer. So in addition to that box that I talked about,
Yeah.
apply where most needed, people can apply for Peace Corps within the 6 different areas of economic development, environment, youth development, business, community development, health, and I forget there's one more.
Okay.
So initially, like I said, I was slated to go to Albania, and that was more on the business consulting side. So that would
Okay.
have been working with NGOs, uh, working with their business development, marketing, those types of things. And post COVID, they decided to fill that cohort with people that had been in Albania, evacuated during COVID, and then brought back. So
Okay.
then I kind of got bumped down the line earlier. So then my focus became educate English education and youth development. So no, I've never been a teacher. I've
Okay.
worked a lot in youth development. So I think that probably was a big part of it.
Okay. And so I want you to you and I just briefly mentioned the tapestry behind you and stuff. So you're in a place that is predominantly Buddhist? Is Mongolia
Yes. Mhm.
predominantly Buddhist? Okay. And are you in a place that the Peace Corps provides? Do you get a stipend, or how do the living expenses and things work out? And then tell us about your
Sure. Okay.
tapestry
So in Mongolia, Buddhism is probably the predominant language,
language. Yeah.
religion or spirituality.
Okay.
But um, overall, Mongolia is very tolerant of people of different religions, and that gets traced back to Genghis Khan's era, 800, 900 years ago. We in America call him Genghis Khan. That's because somebody decided that's the way it's going to be pronounced, but it's actually Genghis Khan.
I say Genghis, a hard G.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So part of his empire was religious tolerance. So
Oh,
yeah, he and his military did a lot of bad things and they killed a lot of people, but they also the people that survived or the people that they wanted had all these different talents, and they brought all these people to the capital city and employed them in different areas, whether it's clothing or military warfare, not telecommunications, technology or something like that. And all of these people came from Russia, from Hungary, from India, China, Korea, Japan, and every place in the middle. So all of these people came from different backgrounds and different religions, and they were allowed to practice their religion. So that has been a huge carryover, if you will, for
mhm.
900 years from Genghis Khan's era. So there are, I mean, there is great religious tolerance here,
That's
and
cool.
um, on the Christian side, I was raised Christian. My views are a little bit more ecumenical now.
Mhm.
A lot of people celebrate Christmas here, for example, but it's not really Christ centered. It's
Okay.
more of like an extension of New Year's.
Oh,
And New Year, oh, there's another one I can't think of it right now, but from those of us in the States and Western Europe, it's a little
yeah.
bit of a different focus. So the tapestry that's behind me is one of, I think, the terrace. I'm not sure. There are six
T-A-R-A-S, terrace, like how?
Taras. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
there, and they are religious symbols or spiritual symbols for people who practice Buddhism. Um, I, I'm sorry to all of the folks who practice Buddhism. I'm just learning about some of that
I was
stuff.
going to
I'm not,
ask you, yeah, if you knew anything about it before getting there. So, yeah.
no, no.
Okay.
And the other question you had, I've already forgotten. Do you remember the other question?
No, because I forget things too.
Okay.
Okay, well, you answered one of what my next one was going to be, was whether you knew anything about Buddhism,
Mhm.
when you got there. So I've seen pictures of you with the kids, and I have to remember to tell you about this game that I just saw online.
But
That
I'll make a note.
when I yes, so rock paper scissors, write that down, okay? And then
Okay.
I'll tell you the game because you could do it with those groups of kids that
Okay.
I've seen you working with. Um, so. Will you be there like the 2 years um and then come back to the States? Do you think you'll apply and go somewhere else or have an extension? What are you thinking about related to what you're doing right now?
Big news coming. Let me also say one thing. You talked about pictures. One of my first visitors was a former staff member from my first and second cast year. She came to
Okay.
visit last year, and then my friend that just recently visited, more of a neighbor, former colleague. And I have two other castmates from my first cast who are still interested in coming to visit me in Mongolia. So going back to, us not in America,
Right.
not hearing a whole lot about Genghis Khan or Mongolia, that type of thing, through my posts on social media. Several people have comments like, I had no idea. And
Right.
it's like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting to learn all these things and share these and then see how people react to that. So, and I've been able to attract two, maybe four people to come to Mongolia and see what it's really like, at least,
Yeah.
a snippet of it. And it's been pretty cool to be able to do that and open some of those doors, explore some things, and challenge myself in ways I never ever imagined 3+ years ago. Okay,
Wow.
so typically, people in Peace Corps do a 27-month program. So
Okay.
it's
Right.
3 months of like staging, intense language learning, and learning about our resources, safety and security, health, lesson planning, working with teams, and all these different things. And then after a language proficiency test and then swearing in, then we go to our post for 2 years for 24 months. So altogether, it's a 27-month program.
Okay.
And people can, if they want, and if it's okay with the school where they are assigned and or an NGO, they maybe can extend for a third year of service, or maybe 6 months.
Okay.
And that I think is relevant all around the world for all Peace Corps volunteers. There's a possibility to do that. And I think there's a good number that do that. Also, when they're done, most people go back to the States. A lot of people go back to grad school, go
Mm,
back to jobs, or find something new.
right.
And then some people decide to do what's called the return Peace Corps volunteer, which is more of a skills focused opportunity for 6 to 9 to 12 months.
Okay.
And it's not the 3 months of staging at the beginning. It's more of like a month orientation. And then there's months of more of a specific focus on kind of like business consulting in different areas.
Mhm.
Um, Once someone has been a Peace Corps volunteer, he or she can then do the Peace Corps response part. Okay, so here's my big news. I am going to extend my third year of service, but I'm not going to be in Mongolia. I'm going to go back to the States for a few weeks, and then in mid-August, I'm going to the small island country in the Pacific called Palau for 11 months. And I
Wow.
will,
That's near like Tonga, and it's one of the oh, I'm trying to think. There's like 5 or 6 islands there together, and right?
there are a lot of, yeah, there are a lot of islands there.
Yeah.
So it's east of Philippines, north of Australia, and
Yeah.
I think southwest of Guam.
Oh,
And there are several islands. There's an entire population of about 18,000 people in all these different islands. And my city here, Arva
yeah.
here, has 30,000 people. So this is going to be quite a change to be surrounded by water and green and palm,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Whereas here, it's the steppe, it's brown, it's gray, especially in the winter.
Yeah.
Very cold in the winter. We just had snow again today on
I
May
saw those
7th.
pictures of you. You guys were bundled up on that whole trip, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah,
And a month and a half ago, I was walking in the hills with my cat in shorts and a t-shirt. So it,
up and down. So
yeah.
interestingly, the United Methodist Church in Tucson, part of the Southwestern District, encompasses Hawaii and the islands, the Pacific Islands. So we have a pastor at our church who joined just a year ago from Tonga. And he just celebrated his son's first birthday, and they had this whole event. And the dancers that came did dances from Tahiti, from each of the islands. And I
Mhm.
swear that's one of them. So now I have to go back and
Yeah,
look because it's the
yeah.
one I never remember. So,
Yeah.
wow. And I was going to ask you about the weather because of how cold you did that one picture where you were on top of the van, like in the one movie or something. You got
Yeah,
on the top of the van.
yeah.
That was just so funny to me. People are going to need to start following you on Facebook. I know what my other question was. My question was
Mhm.
related to, do they pay for where you live? Do you get a
Oh, yeah.
stipend or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. So we are volunteers. We do not get paid a salary, but
Okay.
our community partners pay for our apartments, or it may be a host family, and then they give us a living allowance for food, clothing, supplies, those types of things. They give us a medical kit. They give us all a sleeping bag. And if we were in Africa, we would get, well, we all got mosquito nets. We got water filters, fire extinguishers, those types of things. Some of the basic stuff that's required for safety of Peace Corps volunteers. And many of us are in remote areas, so we also get a medical kit. So if something happens, we have something immediate to take
Mhm.
care of. But then if it's a bigger issue, then we have to get to a capital city or someplace bigger.
Yeah.
But uh, generally, this here in Mongolia, the schools help pay for some of our utilities, but that's mixed. It varies by schools. Peace Corps pays our rent,
Okay.
and then there's a little bit of money that they deposit into our Mongolian bank account to pay for food and those types of things. So I'm
Okay.
not making any money, but I'm not losing any
No,
money.
you're not losing any money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically, I'm taking care of. And there are people that spend a little bit more and
Of
they
course.
give themselves personal loans, those types of things. But we were allowed to bring 2 suitcases of whatever we wanted here, and that's basically what we can take back. So, of
Yeah.
course, most of us will have souvenirs. So, everything we get or buy is like, am I going to consume this? Will I use it? Will I donate it or sell it at the end?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, I see you mostly in pictures with kids, but I kind of laugh to myself. I'm tall and heritage Swedish and German, and I haven't been to Asia, but my kids work in a language school, my son and daughter-in-law in Denver. And in the
Mhm.
Mandarin section, I'm like a head taller than everybody. And so when I think about traveling, even to Italy, like with my size shoe that I wear, because I'm bigger than many Italian women and stuff. So, so for you, are you taller? Do you feel like the size clothing that you wear is easily, even readily available in Mongolia?
No,
No, that's
no. So yeah, I'm not necessarily taller, but I'm
okay.
definitely bigger and thicker.
Okay.
And if I like, I cannot find clothes here in Arva here that fit me, so I have to go to UB Ulaanbaatar, which is a 7 hour bus ride. And there's a market called Narantal Market in UB, the capital city, and everybody knows about it. So it's this building that's crammed with all these different shops, and then there's an outdoor market. So this was several months ago. I went to the outside and I said, I would like to, in Google Translate, my best friend,
Yeah, yeah.
I said to some shopkeepers or vendors, I'm looking for a size, a shoe. And they said, what size? And I said, 45. And it was Tao, which means 45.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, Bakwi, which means no. And then I can hear them yelling down to their neighbors in the next stall,
Like, does anybody?
Tao, Tao. It's like, Bakwi, no, no. So I'd walk down the aisle and I'd hear it again, Americanas, Tao, like 10 different stalls and aisles. It was just like everybody knew I was there. Everybody knew that I was looking for size 45 shoes. So finally, I found these shoes and they're not the most comfortable, but I bought them. So it's not always like that, but yeah, there are
Yeah.
some limited options. Now,
Yeah.
there are
I
some 10th, 11th, and 12th graders in my school that are like this much taller than me too.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so I'm definitely not the tallest, but overall thicker. And and let me mention one more thing about like payment,
Yeah.
stipend, that type of thing. Peace Corps volunteers, when we finish our 27 months, we get about $10,000 US in like a resettlement allowance
Oh,
or bonus.
well, that's kind of nice. It's like a moving
Yeah,
expense or something.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, okay, I'm sorry. That just made me laugh because I just have all these. I just was at an event. We only got like 6 minutes. I was just at an event and there was two women there who are both like 6'1" or 6'2", and they wear
Mhm.
heels and stuff, but that also bigger feet, right? Nobody is 6'1" or 6 foot tall that has a size 5 shoe. And we were saying that when you do carry on luggage, that all of us who have bigger feet should just be allowed an extra bag
Okay.
because our shoes take up a lot of space.
Yeah, I had to bring winter clothes in one of my suitcases. And that was basically it. Shoes
Yeah.
and a coat. That's
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And then
Yeah.
they show the people at the airports who are piling things on, they take them off while they're sitting in the seat. There's some truth to that, depending on how far,
Yeah.
how long, what you're gonna. I wore a
Yeah.
shirt the other day that I bought in a little town in Rothenburg in Germany because the year before I had done this river cruise in France and it was like 105 degrees. And then I took summer clothes to this one in Germany, the Rhine, the Main, and the Mosel, and it was freezing. So I was buying clothes in a couple of little stores in Germany in these tiny towns because I didn't have the right stuff, and you get 5 hours in a town and then the boat moves to the next town. So super funny.
Speaking of shirt, there we go.
Oh, you're wearing your Up With People shirt.
There we
Yay!
go.
If you had to
Yep.
take one. All right. So real quickly, because we do have to wrap it up, 2 minutes. How did Up With People prepare you for this?
Whew. Big time. There's so many similarities. It Up with People expanded my brain, expanded my world, extended friendships, lifelong friendships for 40 plus years, um, reinforced my interest and desire of curiosity about learning about different cultures, challenging myself. Not the singing and dancing part. However, there are several times I'll go to a meeting and the teachers say, John, sing a song, or John, do this, or John, talk to them for 10 minutes. Like,
You just assume you can do it.
like, like okay, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and living with host families. When we first came here, we lived with host families for 3 months. And in Palau, I will be living with a host family again at 62 years old.
Yeah.
And
I wondered
and
how
those
you were. I'm going to be 67 this year. I wondered where we were age-wise, how we.
62 for me tomorrow. So,
Happy
whoa.
birthday.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many similarities between Up With People and Peace Corps. And then also I'm a former Rotarian,
Ah,
and I work with youth development, youth exchange, and like
yeah.
community development stuff. I mean, there's just, to me, in my head, it's a win-win-win, direct connection in so many different ways.
So I'm going to end this and I'm going to say thank you. And then I'm going to suggest to those people watching that if they have questions, that they find you on Facebook or any of the names
Absolutely.
that you mentioned that might know you. I got to tell you, I have a 40-year-old who's wants to go hike the Camino. He's just so lost in his life about what he wants to do. And I'm like, this could be really good for him if he had the right skill set, to
Go
do
to
it. So
peacecorps.gov.
peacecorps.gov. Awesome.
Yep. Yep. And
Thank you
I'll be
so
happy to talk to anybody.
Awesome. I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you for your time today, tonight. Happy birthday. It's probably tomorrow where you are already. So
Not quite. Not quite.
yeah. And if you can, I would like to really quick get on Facebook Messenger with you. And I'll call you right back on there and tell you
Okay.
the rock, paper, scissors
Okay.
thing.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you,
Donna,
John.
thank you for taking the time and thank you for doing these interviews with lots of different alumni, get different perspectives. It's interesting. Thank
Super,
you very
super
much.
fun for me. Awesome. All right. I'm gonna quit the recording.
Okay.